God bless everybody today. It is December 1st of 2024. I hope everybody had a safe and happy Thanksgiving. But now are you ready for the chaos and madness to begin? Because what just happened in the last 72 hours with this attack in Syria and the overtaking of Aleppo through the Free Syrian Army, which is backed by Turkey. Okay? Look, everybody's talking about Russia and their bombing of what's going on in Syria and how that's linked to Iran. But look, the Free Syrian Army, the group that's literally attacking in Syria right now, is a anti-Assad Syrian president movement that is formed in this country that's backed by Turkey, that's going to go to start to stabilize this area, which is the area that I've been talking about, and Turkey getting ready to invade. And you can go back and look in this as almost the exact same thing that happened back in Alexander the Great's period of time, because this similar event almost mimics or mirrors it exactly. And what's going to happen as these Free Syrian Army groups start to encompass and take over this area, we have a problem. That problem is the Kurds are getting squeezed to the northeast corner of the country, and that is that start of Daniel 8, okay? Look, Daniel 8 morphs into Ezekiel 38 and 39. You have to have Persia fall before you take 10 nations to Israel, okay? This is the start of everything. These Free Syrian armies are literally compressing the northeast corner of Syria. So in this article, which is the start of everything, I'm telling you, in the next month and a half, 2 months, you're going to see something interesting happen. There's a transition. Actually, this transition has happened in the past. It's going to replay out in the future, and I'm going to show you all these things here as we work through this video. So keep an eye on what's going on out here and follow what I'm talking about, because this is biblical. The other thing is, and I don't say this very often, please like these videos and please share them if you're getting any content out of here so other people can be warned of what's going on. I think it's our duty to get the information out to people so that they can be prepared properly for what's happening. If you're not doing that, then you're not doing the Great Commission, which is what God told us that we're supposed to be doing on this planet at this very moment in time. So please do share and like these videos, and hopefully this information will get out to people. So let's look at this article real quick. This is a Turkish-backed operation. Turkey says Syria rebel assault near Aleppo is a limited operation. At least at first it was, until there was an escalation of this operation due to the fact that basically once Turkey's backed militia groups, the Free Syrian Army, went in, these guys started to scatter, and so it allowed them to overtake much more area than they thought originally. And so this has consumed a large portion of the northeast corner of Syria, which is doing a couple of things. Not only is it eliminating these Assad forces, it's also compressing the Kurds into the northeast corner of that country, which is backed up against Turkey, as we'll show you on the map in a few minutes. And what that's going to do is cause Turkey all kinds of friction. And then if you go into the time of Daniel or Alexander the Great, as we're leading into a Daniel 8 effect, what happened? Alexander comes out of Turkey down into Syria and forces the Kurds east towards Erbil, Iraq, then goes down into Lebanon. So there's a lot happening here. Look, Erdogan is starting to set up his front. He's going to eliminate as many possible problems so that he can drive down into Lebanon, and he doesn't get along with Assad, so he's going to try to eliminate that government because it's backed by Russia and Iran. Okay, well, they're on the other side of the equation. So the people that think that Russia or Iran or China or any of these groups are Gog of Magog, they don't know what they're talking about if they actually understand the history of the Jews. Okay, this is all about Turkey, Iran, Israel. Okay, it's that simple. This is going to break out soon, and I've got a couple ideas on just exactly how this is going to happen. But let's look at these reports, let's look at some maps, and let's look at a few other things, and then I'll give you my breakdown of what I think is actually getting ready to happen and why. So Turkish security sources on Thursday said that Syrian rebel groups had launched a limited offensive towards Aleppo to stop Syrian government attacks targeting civilian populations in this area of Idlib. So if you look at the attack zones or the buffer he's creating, what has happened? The Syrian forces have come in from the southern portion of this area and come into Aleppo, attacked Aleppo, are trying to control the area of Idlib, and that they're actually pushing down to Hama, or Hama, or however you want to say that. This is setting up a buffer zone so Turkey can control this area, okay? But what that's doing is it's forcing all these Kurdish nations to flee northeast because they have no way to really go here other than around this front, okay? So they're getting literally squeezed. So really from Manbiji to Aleppo, through the province of Idlib, all the way down to Hama is basically being controlled by these Syrian forces, which had done a shock and awe effect, because this literally happened overnight. Aleppo fell like within 24 hours, okay? This is a real problem because this is like the second largest city in Syria, and so it's a real problem. So I just wanted to lay this out, but what this is doing is this is compressing by having this front literally being shoved northeast, okay? Anything that's going to get caught in here is going to get wrapped up into this hole, okay? And that's Kurds, okay? What are we talking about? When Alexander the Great comes down into Syria through this horn, he's going to push the Kurds to Erbil over here in Iraq, okay? Because they're going to flee from this front, be squeezed between this compression down here and this northern or southern border of Turkey, which is literally going to squeeze them over to Iraq. It's going to be like literally being shoved through a tunnel, okay? And this is going to accelerate as it moves forward. So this attack originally started on Wednesday. They grabbed major swaths of area. They basically invaded into the city of Aleppo and almost, if not controls the whole city. They're heading down through the province of Idlib down towards Hama. And this is going to accelerate this problem that we have in the Middle East here, and also accelerate the prophecy of Daniel 8 that will then eventually turn into Ezekiel 38 and 39 prophecy in the next year and a half, as I've been indicating on the paradigm. We'll go into the paradigm soon to show you where that is on that chart. Now, this originally had a de-escalation in 2019, okay? This is extremely important because I had talked about 2019 and when this happened prior. So if you go back to 2019 and you go back to my videos and you actually watch them, you'll see something that was extremely important. But this is going to reoccur also and mimic a future event which is getting ready to happen. Okay, and I'm going to set this up so you can understand what I'm talking about. Okay, in 2019, on October 6th, Trump administration ordered out the troops in northern Syria. Northeast Syria. 3 days later, Turkish forces come in and immediately fill the vacuum, okay? You're going to have a similar event happen in January, right after Trump comes in. Because what he's going to do is he's going to let Turkey come in, fill the vacuum after he pulls our troops out, which he's been talking about for some time, pulling our troops out so they're not fodder for all this devastation over here, and allowing Turkey, which is a NATO partner, to stabilize this area. Trump's going to make a critical error here, because he doesn't realize that Erdogan's game, even though his rhetoric's been relatively harsh against Netanyahu and Israel, Erdogan is going to start out by driving down into Syria and forcing those Kurds to be squeezed towards the east between these two buffer areas, his in Turkey and this one now he's creating to the south, which is compressing everything in between. That's going to be squeezed to the east. So the Kurds are going to have to fall towards the east. That's what happened in the past in history, okay, during Alexander the Great's time. Then what happens? Turkey comes down into Lebanon and takes out entire Lebanon by July of that year, okay? This is where Trump's going to make a critical error here, I believe. And it's biblical. He can't do anything about it. It's supposed to play out. It's just what's supposed to happen. But he's going to make a critical area because he's going to allow Turkey to come down and control this area. And Trump not knowing that in the back of Erdogan's mind, his main goal is to go down through Syria into Lebanon. And when you go back in history, as I've shown you on these charts, through these maps and through history in general, Alexander comes down in January and absorbs entire Lebanon completely, absorbs everything by the end of July of that same year. So I keep telling you, Erdogan's going to break out right after Trump is inaugurated in. Trump's going to already have brokered a deal with Erdogan. I already seen it going on. They've already done the phone calls. I know what's getting ready to happen. Trump's going to say, look, you're part of NATO. I'm going to allow you to stabilize this. It's going to protect your southern border. But then he doesn't realize that Erdogan's not going to stop there. He's going to come down with shock and awe, force those Kurds to the east, and then drive down into Lebanon. And then we're going to have that aha moment on Trump's side where he goes, wow, that wasn't supposed to happen like that. And now what do we do? So this has happened in the past. It's going to happen and reoccur in the future. And then I want to show you one last twist to this, because this really, I think, matters. So if you've been following my theory and concept that Erdogan is the white horseman, that when he was released in 2019 on October 9th on Yom Kippur, okay, when he came down and started that 30-mile buffer zone, something happened directly right after that that I think was really important. We started seeing COVID reports coming out right after he invaded, okay? So I had to logically conclude that Erdogan is the white horseman, that he's starting to see the next horses, or the next three horses in Revelation, start to gallop with him, okay, which is going to absorb everything in the Middle East and affect it tremendously as we walk into 2025, into the next year and a half, before we see an Antichrist on the ground, okay? So right after he invades, literally within days, we start to see COVID come out. And what happens? On the very first day of that year, 2020, now I believe they actually declared it a global nightmare on March 11th. But if you actually look at the timeline here of the World Health Organization, everything started to break right at the beginning of 2020. On the very first day of 2020, we started to see this mass movement to try to do something about this global pandemic that we were walking into, and how that was getting ready to affect this whole world, our economy, and everything we do as we move forward. And that change is still in our atmosphere today based on what they did in the past. So that's getting ready to move. So my question is, when Erdogan sees that Trump has pulled out these troops in January, right after he gets in, because I believe, in my personal opinion, he'll do a Joe Biden thing on the very first day. If you remember, and this is what's going to happen here, I'm going to get into a lot of weeds here. It's going to be a longer video. So what happened when Joe Biden was in? Very first day, he steps up to the plate. He sits at his Oval Office. He has stacks of executive orders around him, and he undoes everything that Trump basically did so that they could rein in this wokeness that they've done in the last 4 years. Trump's going to have a similar situation when he comes in the first day, because they're already working through this transitionary period. He's going to sit in that Oval Office for hours and sign executive orders, which is going to drive the left crazy. You're going to say, well, he's a dictator. Why? Joe Biden did the same thing back there 4 years ago. Exactly the same thing. So you're telling me this guy's a dictator because he's doing the same thing that Joe Biden did 4 years ago. He has no choice but to undo the mass destruction that the last 4 years has happened upon this country. Another thing that I'll predict in that same statement is, look, these numbers that we've seen coming out of this administration are nothing transparent. And they've been fudged to the point where they have two sets of books. It's like a truck driver. I've got one set of books I'm going to hand in, and I use this other set to live on, okay? When Trump, Musk, and Ramaswamy actually unlock the devastation and the true numbers that have happened in the last 4 years, you're going to realize a couple things. The economy's in much worse shape than it is. Inflation is much higher it is, and unemployment is much higher than they said it was, and that they've been fudging these numbers forever. So 3 or 4 months later, as Trump gets into his administration and they have to redo all these numbers and give you some truth out here, the Democrats are going to run around the corner and say, look, 4 months later, look, Trump's economy looks terrible. It's terrible out here. Look, this is all Trump's fault. No, it's not. Trump walked into this nightmare. Look, you go back 4 years before, Trump had a good administration. He had wages coming up, there was no wars, the economies were doing good, and he was actually on pretty good talking grounds with most of these world dictators. Now look what we have. It's total mass confusion. You're getting ready to walk into World War III as Joe Biden's literally sending missiles to Ukraine, to send missiles into Russia, which is literally starting a third world war between NATO countries and Russia. Okay? Right before he leaves, you've got a man that is not even capable of tying his shoes, but he's still running the country out here, and we know he's not capable. That's why they removed him, okay, and put Kamala in there, okay, and she failed completely because nobody wants to go down that road anymore. It's too far left for everybody. It's too extreme. I want to get into the political aspect of this, except that Trump is now back in the picture again. In 2016, on October 6th of 2019, he pulls the troops. 3 days later, Erdogan invades. A few days later, we see COVID reports coming out. By the end of that year, in January, we started to see a massive global pandemic. Okay, when Trump allows Erdogan to fill that vacuum, and Turkey comes down and actually does an invasion this time, not just a buffer zone, because look, they're already setting up their front. There's not going to be anything for Turkey to break through that front and head down to Lebanon, and Trump's going to be going, oh man, that is not what we talked about. No, why? Because you didn't look at the long picture. Erdogan wants to go down and help the Palestinian and Lebanese people, and he's going to go against Israel. Why? Because if you go back in time, we've seen a couple things happen. Netanyahu came out at the UN a few years back with a map of God, okay, with a complete map of the area of God's territory in Jerusalem and Israel, and that area around the Middle East, around Jerusalem and Israel, okay? It gives you the full map of God's area that he gave his 12 tribes and who was supposed to control that area. Okay, well, look at that map and see how it encroaches on these areas that Turkey's concerned about. Then what happens? Turkey comes out shortly after that and shows an Ottoman map and says, hey, 100th year has just happened where we're going to rebuild the new Neo-Ottoman Empire, and I want to absorb a new footprint called the Neo-Ottoman Empire that we're getting ready to rebuild, and I'm going to build my new legacy for the next 100 years. It's not really that hard to understand what's going on out here, guys, and he's showing you in the past what's getting ready to happen. So, when Trump allows us to pull our troops out of northeast Syria, that is going to create a vacuum. That vacuum is going to fill immediately by Turkey. And it's going to go against not only Assad, but Iran and Russia, okay, because they're backing Assad, okay. A lot of these bombings you're hearing about in Syria right now are Russian led, but Turkey's not going to tolerate that. And the Kurds are in a bad place because they're getting shoved up to the northeast corner. So they're going to have to end up doing something. And what happens is when Turkey comes down, fills that void, that vacuum, that gap in January, right after Trump gets in, probably in the first week of that transition of January 20th through the end of the month, Turkey's going to immediately consume that area, and then he's going to start pushing down into Lebanon. I've been telling you this for some time that this is going to happen. So if you go to my website, free Wix site, I don't sell anything out here. It's endofdaysurvival.com. This will bring you to the 5 charts that I have out here. They're all PDFs. They can be downloaded. Actually, this one that I'm going to show you it can be printed, but it's pretty small print, so you might have to use a magnifying glass to see it, or you could take it in and blow the chart up. But when you click on this, it's going to give you my timeline, my Paradigm 2030 chart, which gives you what's coming up in the next 1,745 days. So there's your day count right there. It's 1,745 days from today to the Feast of Trumpets of 2029. So when you click on this chart, when you click on that PDF, it brings up this chart, and then we're going to zoom in on this area up in through here real quick because I want to show you what I'm talking about and how I had already indicated that a lot of this was already on the chart. So on this chart, as I've said, I believe when Erdogan broke out on October 9th of 2019 on Yom Kippur, on my birthday of all things, amazing. That's when I also finished that 117 step chart that I did for the breakdown of the 22 chapters of Revelation. I realized that on October 6th of 2019, Trump administration was withdrawing his forces from northeast Syria, and that on Yom Kippur on October 9th, 3 days later, Erdogan literally goes in and invades both Syria and Iraq through Operation Peace Spring, and then just shortly after that we saw those COVID reports coming out in October of 2019, and then by the first part of the year you had literally a global pandemic on your hands. As you move forward into this chart and you get into this area here, and we'll blow that up just a little better so you can see it. I have indicated that on January of 2025, Turkey would start an invasion into Syria that would basically force that to go into Lebanon by around March, and that they would literally absorb Lebanon by the end of July of 2025. Okay. So keep your eye on everything between now and the end of January, because I believe that's when Turkey's actually going to come down and break out. It could be right around February, beginning of February. But if you go back in history, Alexander broke out in January, absorbed the whole Middle East and even Iran in 1 year. And if you look at my chart, he'll be back in Israel in about a year and a half. So, that's extremely important. The other thing, though, that I wanted to bring to your attention is, and I've had more time to think about this because this is a new concept nobody's talking about. Look, when you go into Haggai 1 and 2 or Daniel 9 and 11, it indicates about the first or second year of Darius the Mede, which is the president of the Kurdish region. Now, I originally had thought, since they weren't a nation, or what they call a stateless nation, I didn't know exactly how this was going to work. So I have a nation that's not really formed. It's free flowing through about 4 different countries. They have a regional capital in Erbil, Iraq, which is interesting because we have a green zone there and we've been attacked multiple different times. And so when those Kurds get shoved from Syria eastward, they'll end up in Erbil, Iraq, and then you have that Battle of Gaugamela, okay? But the question that I was trying to understand is, when you go into Haggai 1 and 2 and you go into Daniel 9 and 11 and other places, it talks about Darius the Mede in his first or second year. And I thought, well, that's interesting. So we have a now formed government. So what originally happened here was, in June 10th of this year, we were supposed to have an original election through the Kurds, okay? That got pushed back because Erdogan said that if they formed a nation and they actually had the elections, that he would invade against the Kurds, okay? So it stopped the elections. Those actually played out on October the 20th, okay? Now realize that this man, even though he hasn't had a nation, actual formed nation, as a nation where they actually have borders, he's been the leader of this group of 4 regions, basically, since June 10th of 2019. Well, if you bring that to the election cycle of June 10th of 2023 or 24, you would realize that he's been in position for over 4 years, which is his length of term. Okay, you can see that it's only renewable once. So my thought was, okay, he's been in there for 4 years, but then when they set this nation up, we got a problem because he's been in there for over 4 years. But then I thought, that's not really the case, because they've not really had a bordered nation in the past. And if you look at a stateless nation, it indicates that these stateless nations do not possess their own sovereign state. So he can't be the president of a country or a region that doesn't have borders or a sovereign state. But now he has a formed government that actually ratified itself right after October 20th. So now they do have a sovereign state with a constitution, and Erdogan is getting ready to come down and invade against them. But his main goal is, first of all, to remove the Kurds towards the east so that he can drive down into Lebanon, Palestine to help the Israeli people, and then he'll come back to the Kurds as he gets ready to go and attack Iran and pushes them, both those 2 nations, together. And as you look at Daniel 8, what does it say? The Kurds will align with the Persians, and then you'll see Turkey come over and crush them. So it's extremely important. So I had to rethink this one a little bit. Do we have now a nation with a state, with a president that's not going to be reelected? He's just put in place due to, he's the one that won that party election, okay? So he won the most seats. And so this president, in retrospect, would actually be, this would be his first year. So when you go into Daniel 9 and 11, Haggai 1 and 2, and other places, and it talks about Darius the Mede in his first or second year, that started on around October 20th of this year. So when you project out the first year, that goes from October 20th of 2024 to 2025. The second year would take you to October 20th of 2026. Which then takes you into what? An Antichrist phase, okay? So in reality, you actually have about 5 modern day kings we can track out here. You got Nebuchadnezzar, which is Erdogan. You got Zedekiah, which is Reuben Rivlin. You got Jehoiakim, which is Isaac Herzog. You got Darius the Mede, which is this regional leader of the Kurds. And then you can also go into Egypt's leader, which has massive judgments against them, and that's Al-Sisi. So you can literally lock this paradigm down into 5 modern day kings of today, or leaders that are literally in place. And these kings and leaders are in place exactly the same times and years that the kings of the past were in the future today. And that's what I mean. This is a paradigm. He's already wrote the book. He's giving you history lessons on what's getting ready to happen, and he's going to play out these history lessons in the future, as I've been indicating in my theory that and concepts that this is exactly how this would play out, and this is exactly how it will play out, and that's how the paradigm's built. Look, if you go back to those charts, you have a Shemitah cycle built into a strong generation of the Jews, built into a paradigm that's literally built out of the book. These verses come directly out of the books. You lay that king up against the past king to the future king. You lay the date against the Jewish calendars based on the year the king's in place, and it gives you a date stamp. You lay that into the chart, and it builds a complete picture of what's getting ready to happen. I know that's saying a lot, guys, but look, I've spent years building these charts, and I'm literally seeing dates happen right before they occur. Just as I've been telling you for months now, as I finally uncompressed all this information within this Shemitah cycle, and we realized that we had to take it out to the Feast of Trumpets of 29, which is that 2,000 year gap between 30 AD and the very beginning of the prophetic calendar of 2030. On the first day of the Feast of Trumpets of 2029, September 10th, takes you into the new year of 2030 on the Hebrew calendars. You have a completion of 2,000 years of time from the crucifixion and the rising of our Lord and the fulfillment of the spring feast to the completion of the fall feast in 2029 during September 10th through the completion of the tabernacles of the end of that year. But on that very first day of the Feast of Trumpets, September 10th of 2029, you go into a prophetic calendar of 2030 and you start their actual prophetic year, which is 2,000 years after Jesus passed. Okay. And that should take you back to a 7-day creation calendar of each day being 1,000 years. Okay. I just did a video about this. You have 4,000 years from the creation of Adam to Jesus. Jesus' crucifixion was from 30 AD to 2030 AD. That's 2,000 years. So you got 4,000 years between Adam and Jesus, 2,000 years between Jesus and now, which would end on September 10th of 2029, takes you into 2030. That's the end of the 2,000 year reign that takes you in the millennial kingdom. That's what I show you on the chart. I'm not making this stuff up, guys. That's the way it works. And I get it. It's real heavy date stamp specific. Look. The world is being illuminated to you because we are at the end of time. You are literally within months of the globe cracking, breaking like an egg, and the yolk goes down on the pan, okay? That's how bad this is going to get. And when you hit that pan, it's hot, man. You may not have a whole lot more time to prepare. Look, if you get into a major confrontation between Israel and Iran, which I think is going to happen, which is going to drive Erdogan insane as he's watching missiles explode over his Temple Mount that he thinks he owns over there, he's going to accelerate his movements to try to stop this war between Iran, Israel, and all these components, okay? And Turkey will control this whole process by that signing of that treaty, okay, in March of 2026. Look, you have a potential destruction of these 10 nations of Ezekiel 38 and 39 on a very specific date on my chart. Okay? It's in March of 26. I think it's March 4th if my memory is correct. You have an astrological 15-day event that happens between, I believe, February 17th and March 4th. I had to rethink this Kurdish guy. He's been in there for 4 or 5 years already. He should not be there already. He should have been elected out in June of 2024 when they should have run their elections. Those got postponed till October 20th. But now they have a formed nation. They're not a stateless nation. Even though they really don't have borders, they've ratified a constitution and a government, which is what Erdogan didn't want them to do. And he specifically stated that if you form this regional government, I will invade and I will take you out. Okay? And what did you just see right before Israel attacked Iran with that massive barrage? And we haven't really seen a lot between the two since. That was right after Shemini Atzeret and that attack, that aerospace attack from those terrorists, which Erdogan considered to be the Kurds. And then what did he do? He unleashed two fronts in Iraq and Syria and pummeled those people. Okay? Which he's still doing. And if you go to the Syrian live map and you actually look at this, look at what has transpired. And everything is in this corner. I've been telling you guys, this is the breakout. This is the choke point. This is what we should be watching. Right now it's getting ready and is forming. It's forming in front of your faces right now if you want to look at it. This whole area is compacting. The Kurds this way. Erdogan's going to come down and he's going to force those Kurds this way because they have nowhere to go. Okay, nowhere to go. And it's going to be brutal on them. And they're going to fail tremendously and they're going to fall back and they're going to end up around Erbil, Iraq. Okay? Right around here where all these, Turkish military bases are already set up. Ready to go down into Iraq, into Erbil, into Iraq for the Battle of Gaugamela. Then what happens? The Kurds fall down to Baghdad and then form around Shush, Iran. Once the Persians and the Kurdish, once they collapse down into this area, join, Turkey will come over and smash them. Once Iran falls in January of 2026, he's then going to drive back over to Israel with 10 full nations, because at that moment in time you must then go back to Ezekiel 38 and 39 because Daniel 8 just completed because Iran fell and now it's being absorbed into the 10 nations, what will then drive back towards Israel. And in March of 26, I believe March 4th, if my memory's correct, you will see these 10 nations fail on a sixth seal event when the Lord Jesus unleashes his wrath on them on 6:16, which is not the same wrath as Revelation 15:1. Okay, that's the wrath of the Father. The wrath of the Lamb or the Son happens in Revelation 6:16 during the seals. Then if you go to Revelation 8:1 and 2, what does it say? Once you break the seventh seal, there's about a half an hour of silence, then I hand out 7 trumpets, and they go forward and blow those trumpets. Okay, after 7 trumpets happen, what happens? On the last trumpet, go to Thessalonians, go to the older translations, verses, on the last trumpet, the Lord comes back, the 7th trumpet, we start into the wrath phase. 7 bowls. 7 bowls, 10 days of atonement to Yom Kippur. Then we go into a marriage cycle, into the millennial. On that very last day of the feast, or the very first day of the Feast of Trumpets 2029, what do you see? We go into the year 2030, completion of the 2,000 years. I told you this is where the breakout was going to be. I've been telling you this because the Bible's telling you what's getting ready to happen. Look, I'm nothing special out here, guys. I can just see it coming because I can tell it's a history lesson getting ready to form, because there's a paradigm built directly out of the book that tells you it's a history lesson getting ready to happen in the future based on 3 to 5 kings now that we can look in the past that reflect exactly the people in place today in the positions and time that they've been there. Look, if you guys aren't getting ready, then I don't know what to tell you, because you're going to lose the game here and you're going to lose the ability. Look, if Iran blows up here soon into a major escalatory war between Israel and Iran with us backing them, they're going to shut down that Strait of Hormuz. It's going to change the global transition of trade out here, okay? You shut down this area, you've already shut down the Red Sea, you block this whole area, and then Turkey's going to block off this whole area up in here, okay? Do you think anything's going to free flow down into Israel? Nothing's going to get through. In a year and a half, these people will be destitute, as it indicates. Now, I know a lot of the people in Israel right now are like the Eric Steckelbecks and people, and I don't want to call people out, but I think they should hear this, are saying that God will protect them. Okay, well, I'm sorry. Go back and look in the old days of the old prophets. What did the prophets of Israel state? Peace and security, peace and security. God will protect us. God will protect us. Nothing can happen to his chosen people. What happened? They were decimated multiple times and their temples were destroyed twice. The prophecy clearly states 2/3 of the Jews will either perish through disease or death by the sword. 1/3 of those people will be saved, okay? Be taken out for the 1260 days hidden because they believe in the Lord Jesus as true Messianic Jews, Messianic Jews that believe in the Lord Jesus as the true Son of God. He will save these people. He will protect them. He will create an avenue actually to Jordan. Okay? And we talked about that. Red heifer sacrifice, cleanse the people right before you save them, split them all in half, allow them to have a channel towards Edom. I know my timing and a lot of other people's timing aren't the same, but I'm telling you that's when that's going to happen. Why? Look, if you go to Leviticus or Zechariah 13 and 14, it says something extremely important. You follow those 2 chapters. He has a cleansing ceremony of a red heifer sacrifice, which you can find in Numbers 19, which links you to these 2 chapters here. And then right after that red heifer sacrifice and that cleansing of his people so that they can be closer to God, he then removes them to a hidden place to be basically hidden for 1260 days. But look, he wants them to be a more purified people when he gets them there. That's why the red heifer sacrifice occurs, is so that he can cleanse his people prior to hiding them, because he can't be with his people in this corruption that they've created upon themselves. He has to clear that path, and not only clear the path, but cleanse them before they get to this hidden place so that he can protect them properly. And that may not jive with a lot of other people's teachings. I get it. But in my opinion, that's how it happens, and that's how I've laid it out on that paradigm chart. So what will you see? You'll see these 10 nations form around this nation of Israel, around Jerusalem. They'll be sieging it. He'll give them 1 hour of power, which is 15 days, and then they're decimated on a 6th seal event as they're throwing a red heifer sacrifice down, and we see the Mount of Olives split in half, creating a trench between them, So the mountain goes north to south as indicated in the passage, and it allows a pathway from east to west from Jerusalem to Jordan. Okay, right there. There's your path, guys. Right there's your path. He takes them into Edom, hides them for 1260 days. But that red heifer sacrifice cleanses them prior to them entering into this hidden place so that he can be closer to them because they've been corrupted by, well, the world. And you can't be corrupted like the world and be around God. He has to, look, even when Moses went up to the mountain and saw the burning bush, he had to take off his shoes. He had to put himself in a cleansing period of time before he actually went up there and made sure that he could not look at God, but literally be in that condition to be with God. Okay? That cleansing mode that is getting ready to happen during the red heifer sacrifice is going to allow his people, the last remnant, the third of the true believing Jews, to be removed from Jerusalem, Israel, and placed into the hidden place so that they can be protected for 1260 days. So I wanted to bring all these things to your attention. Look, this is going to break hard in the next 2 months. When it does, it's going to change everybody's world. Look, at the beginning of this next quarter, in January, when Trump walks in, they're going to start realizing just how bad this economy truly is, how bad the inflation numbers truly are, how propped up the unemployment numbers are based on them not hiring anybody domestic or any Americans. They're all government and foreign jobs. Okay, and that they've literally taken your taxpayer money and created jobs to keep their numbers strong so they could try to get through an election cycle, which they completely failed at. And now Trump's going to open up the books and he's going to look at you all and go, oh, this is terrible. How do I tell people just how bad it is? And in 4 months, when they see the carnage of what's getting ready to happen, they're going to blame me for it. So I got to head this all off. I got to explain to them. But in the same background, he's going to broker these deals and he's going to allow these vacuums to be filled, which is going to end up bad because Turkey's going to come down in and fill this vacuum here, and he's not going to stop there. He's going to go down into Lebanon. Why? Because if you go back a couple years when Erdogan or Netanyahu pulled out that map of the complete area of God's territory that he said the Jews should have, he looked at that and thought, you're going to invade us. You're going to invade everything. You're going to take everything over. I'm not going to allow that to happen. And when we see this massive tit for tat back and forth between Israel and Iran, which is getting ready to happen, and you see thousands of missiles raining in from multiple locations onto Israel, Jerusalem, and the Temple Mount areas, Turkey's going to see that and freak out because there's no way he's going to allow that Temple Mount to be destroyed. So that's going to force his hand even harder to come down here and do something about it. And if you go into Alexander the Great's timeline, everything from the time he enters from Turkey down into Syria, all the way down into Egypt, back up to Tyre, over to Tehran, takes them out completely, and then he'll end up, in this case, Erdogan will end up back in Israel. It's only going to take about a year and a half, guys. It'll be a shock and awe like we had back in Desert Storm, because we won't be there anymore. There's no one to stop him. The second largest army in NATO. No one has the capacity to stop this guy. He has drone factories, armor. He's ready. He's been preparing for years. Okay? Erdogan's trying to rebuild and has been trying to rebuild this plan for over 20 to 25 years. He's been talking about this. Get your oil ready, folks. You're here. The world is getting ready to break. And I hope you're listening. Please like and share these videos. Get them out to people so they can see what's happening. Explain to your family, your networks of people, your congregations in your churches, and the people that you care about. Start approaching people in your communities, forming groups to say, hey, how are we going to stave all this stuff off? What are we going to do about this as a community as we're getting ready to go into total destruction? God bless everybody. Be safe out there. Get your oil ready and get ready for destruction. But I want to make one last comment before I sign off on this video. No matter what I've told you today, this is set in stone biblical, okay? You cannot change what's going to happen. All you can do is try to ride the storm out in the next 4.5 years or the next 1,745 days until we're gone, okay? You cannot change what's going to happen. But if you know it's coming, you can prepare your nation and your peoples for this terrible time that's getting ready to happen. And if you see it's coming, once we have the great falling away from these churches that believe in a pre-rapture, which should have already probably happened in their eyes as they see this whole thing melt down in front of them, these churches are going to fall away from them. And the people are going to say, why are we here? And why is this happening to us? And we shouldn't be here. So at that point, I would think that they'd be looking at each other in the pews and the congregations, looking up at the minister going, look, what you're saying doesn't seem to really be jiving with this here. You know, you keep telling us we're going to be gone someday, but man, we're here and we can't even hardly maintain. And we're not gone yet. When is that going to happen? When does that happen? Can you pinpoint that down? Because I'll guarantee you they can't. And they're just going to keep throwing it down on whatever day it happens until it happens. Okay? Well, that's not the way this works. Do you even know about the fall feast? Do you even know about the Jewish calendars? Of course you don't, because you're Christians. You don't look into any of this stuff. It doesn't resonate to you because it's all about the Jews. Look, the most important thing I can tell you on this video is the one thing that I can do to save you. You've got to believe in the Son of the God. His name is Jesus. He's the true Son of God. Okay, he's not a man, he's not a prophet, he's the true Son of God. And the other thing I need to warn you about is, look, this is a war for attrition. This is a war for souls. You lose them in this battle in the next 5 years, you lose these people forever. That's what's at stake here, folks. You get what's going on. When you unpack this thing, when you bring it down to the bottom tier, what are you doing? You're trying to save these people's souls in the next 5 years so they can gain eternity into the millennial and the eternity, okay? But if you lose them here, if they sign that treaty, if they fail, if they don't believe in Jesus, they don't have the open door, these people are going to be condemned to a eternity of the bottomless pit of hell. You will lose them forever. We're not talking just about anybody here, folks. We're talking about your family members, your people, your friends that you care about, your community, your churches. He tells you if you're lukewarm, he'll spit you out of his mouth. He doesn't want those kind of people. He doesn't want people that doesn't believe in the Son. The stakes are extremely high. Okay? I'm not telling you to go out and create a holy war against the other side. That's not what this is about. This is about the Great Commission. How do you bring people to this side of the equation, make them realize what's happening, and then realize that they only can believe in the Son of God, the true Jesus, to get to the end of the story, okay, and out of here. And I've had people say, well, why do I have to get to the end of the story? Why do I have to make it to the Feast of Trumpets at 29? Do you really want to die on this plane? Can you do the Great Commission if you're dead? Do you really want to go through that process? Do you want to make it to the end? I know it's going to be horrific, guys. Believe me, no one wants to see what's getting ready to happen as we watch potentially billions of people literally consumed through this process. But the war is to bring them to this side and to save their souls, because this is an eternal thing. And on that note, guys, do what's required. Do what God has asked you to do. He's asked you to do really two things, and you can get away with this one. So I have these people out here that want to do the bare minimum. Oh, I'll just be saved. I'll just make it to heaven. That's all I'm concerned about, is getting myself there. Okay? That's not what he told you to do. He told you to come out and do the Great Commission. Warn people, be a watchman, explain to people, tell anybody that you can when you see it coming, so that they can go and send that word out through their networks, and through verbal networks, through whatever, we can get this word out to people so they can do what's required to protect themselves. Why do we go through the process of collecting oil? Because you're going to starve to death. Somebody said, well, I don't want to live through the world like this. What are you going to do? You're going to lay down and die? You can commit suicide? Well, that's a fatal error. You'll never get to heaven like that. Why would he allow you in his kingdom when you didn't appreciate yourself enough and committed suicide? Really? How freaking retarded is that? I'm sorry. I got to be plain frank here, people. That's not an option. Can't just lay down and die either. It's not human nature to just lay down and give up and die. And when you're in that foxhole, there's a saying, you'll believe in God when you're actually there. You may not believe in him now, but you'll believe in him when you get there. And the other thing I can tell you is this, and I've heard this many, many times. Well, I'm just not into religion. I don't believe in any of this. That's fine. You don't have to. You know what? The other side is ideologically driven. They do. They could care less what you think about them or about their religion or anything. They're so ideologically driven, if they thought they could cut your head off and get their Mahdi, they're all back here quicker, they'd do it, man. They wouldn't even think about it. Over here, you're insulated. You don't get it, man. Most of you. I'm not saying y'all don't get it, but a lot of you don't get it. I drive around all the time. I look around and go, man, this is going to be ugly, because nobody out here is getting ready. Next time you pull up to a four-way stop, look at the cars around you, and you'll remember me saying this. None of these people get it. Go to the mall. Go to Walmart. Go anywhere. This is going to get ugly, guys, because we have not done a very good job of getting people in the right place at the end times. And corruption has overflowed into our cup. It's tainted our water. Now, whether you can place yourself into a position that you can get right with the Lord Jesus, pull your skeletons out, pray to him, repent to him, get on the right terms, start getting a purpose within God himself so that you can move his word forward, do the Great Commission as we all should be doing down here as we watch literally the world break in front of our eyes. You guys need to be doing what you should be doing, and that's God's work out here. Look, I'm just one man. I can show you the truth as I see it based on what he's given me as inspiration. Through the building of the Paradigm 2030 or whatever chart I've given you, I've meticulously broken this stuff down to so much detail that most people don't even want to follow it because it's just too much. But if you don't understand the details to to the very finite points that I've given you, you cannot put the charts together and show them what's getting ready to happen. Look at what's happening out here. Look at what's happening out here. Okay? Pages and pages of events are breaking down in the Middle East. I mean, look at all this in just a few hours. I could scroll down this thing for a while now, okay? It's amplifying exactly where I told you it would. Why? Because it's supposed to happen this way. Be safe out there, folks. Get your oil ready. And in a couple months, 6 months, you're going to start to see a major change in what's happening out here. And it's going to affect you, your families, your churches, your communities, and everything. So get ready for it. I've tried to explain this to you for some time. You've had plenty of time to get ready if you've been watching. But if you haven't been watching, you're just finally being made aware of it. You're in a major deficit already. And so you need to think hard about what you do with your resources. You know, a lot of people don't have the capacity to put 5 years of food in their little apartment, or even a community to put 5 years of food in their pantries so they can protect themselves. So you have to start building networks out here. You need to talk to your community leaders. You need to say, look, what's going on out here? Hyperinflation is getting ready to happen. You probably got a stagflation unemployment problem getting ready to happen once you move out of the Christmas season and you go into the new year. People are going to start getting laid off. You had that oil embargo in 1973 as you had during the Yom Kippur War of 1973, which is a reflection of what's getting ready to happen again. And that's another thing. Go back to the 1973 Yom Kippur War. What happened right after that? Oil embargo in 1973, which led to your gas lines and total shutdown of this country. If you go into the news, what's happening? The United Emirates and the OPEC nations are moving away from the petrodollar at this very moment in time and breaking that 50-year deal with us. All this stuff's happening. As BRICS is forming. I know I'm rambling, guys, but there's so much happening out here I could go on for hours and keep talking about stuff that's literally happening in front of you. But I'm not going to do that. You should by now understand the picture of what's coming. I'll keep updating these things. I'm telling you, within the next couple months, if you haven't got things ready, things are going to get really hard to prepare anymore. You just may not have the products out there. They may cost a lot more. They just may have broken supply chains. You've still got a potential dock worker strike in January if they don't vote on that thing. You could shut the whole East and Gulf ports down. That hasn't completed yet. You're getting ready to walk into close to $40 trillion in debt, and Erdogan, and this is the other thing I want to bring to your attention. Trump, on his very first day, he walks into the Oval Office. He's going to do a Joe Biden. He's going to sit down with literally hundreds of executive orders, and he's going to start undoing everything Joe Biden's done in the last 4 years. Okay, on top of massive layoffs of government workers that are non-essential, that have been propped up through taxpayer money to keep his numbers afloat and looking like he has a clue out here. I'm talking about Joe Biden here looking like he has a clue in hiring jobs. You go look at those breakdowns of those charts, the only people who got hired were government and foreign workers. There was no domestic jobs created within the American people. Those are negative, okay? Look, you can create jobs all day long with taxpayer monies. I could bring 20,000 jobs on today and pay them all day long through your taxpayer money. But those job numbers are revised down usually and lately have either been almost non-existent or negative, up to almost 80,000 jobs a month at times. He's already brokered deals with a number of different countries and wars, like Russia, Ukraine. He's brokering deals with them already. He's talking about Turkey brokering deals with them so that they can deal with Iran and Israel problems. Okay? Look, Trump knows the problem up in northern Syria, but he doesn't understand that he's going to go down. Literally, he's going to bring Turkey down into Lebanon by opening up that hole. And Turkey's going to fill that vacuum. When Trump's sitting there with a stacks of executive orders and literally signing them for hours in front of the country, the left will go insane. Because he's the dictator in the room. Why? Joe did the same thing when he came in. Guys, get clear optics out here. Realize what's happening in front of you. Realize there's so many parts working out here that you can barely keep up with all this stuff, okay? But in the last 72 hours, as you can see, this has broken hard, okay? And it's just going to get harder. And the world's getting ready to fracture into pieces. And you couldn't put Humpty Dumpty back together again on this one. The only one that's going to fix this problem is the Lord Jesus and the Creator himself. So I want to bring these things to your attention. You need to understand what's happening out here, and you're down to a matter of literal months. You know, if it breaks down in months over here, how long does it take to reverberate to us? This pebble that's being dropped into the ocean here will reverberate out to us soon. It will impact us. If you haven't got ready up to this point, or up to the point where it finally does break, you won't have the ability to. And most people don't have the resources to do it anyway. So take heed and do what's required to protect yourselves and your families and your networks and the people around you and the people that you don't even care about. The more people you tell, the more they talk. The sooner and closer it gets and is directly in your face and you're seeing it, the more aware of you will be of what's happening out here, because it's directly affecting you. And most people won't do anything unless it's affecting them directly. And like I said many times, if I give you any hope out here, you won't do anything. You'll just wait till it breaks, and then you'll wish you'd done something. Well, I'm not going to give you a lot of hope. The only hope I'm going to give you is at the end of this story, it ends up well. If you are a true believer in the Lord Jesus, you will get an open door out of this madness, whether you're dead or alive. Okay? I'm going to try to get to the end of the story because I want to see if the paradigm plays out. Did God give me enough inspiration to build the story to show us what's coming? I don't know yet. I'm still trying to confirm it. But my major confirmation, as I've said many times, is when Turkey breaks out. I've told you many times, as I've uncompressed this and put this chart together in this Shemitah cycle, that this would happen around January, just as it did in the past during Alexander the Great's period of time. So please do what's required. Please do what's needed to get your people in the right condition. I do not want you a year, 2, 3 from now to look at the faces of your family and what's they're starving to death and struggling in front of you and going, I knew I should have done more. I had years to prepare prior to this. If I just took a couple cans of stuff and put them on the shelf every week, I'd have a store of food in my home that could maybe sustain us to the end of this. And I get it. It's hard to put 5 years of food in your home, or whatever, 14 or 1745 days or whatever I've got on the calendar here. But that's what it's going to take. You can't lay down and die. You can't create suicide. I don't think he'd appreciate that one well. I'm pretty sure that's one of those unforgiven sins. Why would I care about you when you didn't care about enough of yourself to maintain yourself on this plane of existence to help me through this process? So get right with him. Get your skeletons out. All of them. He already knows what they are. So just throw it down on him, okay? Lose the ego and approach your Creator and repent to him the terrible things that we've all done in our lives so that we can get right with him before we even get there. And on that note, be safe, God bless, and get right with Jesus.